Richard Chen had been sitting in the corner booth of the small roadside diner for almost 30 minutes, and he still hadn't touched his coffee. The steam had long stopped rising from the cup. He just stared at it, watching his reflection ripple on the dark surface. This wasn't his usual type of place. Richard was a tech millionaire, the kind of man who normally ate at restaurants where the menu didn't have prices. But today he needed somewhere quiet, somewhere nobody knew his name or his face, somewhere he could just breathe without someone asking him about quarterly reports or stock prices. The diner was nearly empty on this Tuesday afternoon. Just a few truck drivers at the counter, and an elderly couple sharing a piece of pie. The walls were painted a faded yellow, and the vinyl seats had cracks that someone had tried to fix with duct tape. It was the kind of place that served breakfast all day and didn't judge you for ordering pancakes at 3 in the afternoon. A young woman in a waitress uniform approached his table. Her name tag said Katie. She couldn't have been more than 24 or 25. Her shoes were worn at the heels, and her uniform had been washed so many times the color had faded from black to a grayish shade. But when she smiled at him, it was genuine. "More coffee, sir?" she asked, already reaching for the pot she carried. Before Richard could answer, the front door swung open with more force than necessary. A woman backed through it, struggling with something heavy. She was trying to pull a wheelchair over the threshold, and she looked like she was about to cry. Katie didn't hesitate. She set down the coffee pot and rushed toward the door. "Here, let me help you with that," Katie said, already grabbing one side of the wheelchair. The girl in the wheelchair looked about 15 or 16. Her head tilted to one side and her hands were curled in her lap. Richard recognized the signs immediately. Cerebral palsy. His own daughter had different challenges, but he knew that look in the mother's eyes. That exhausted, desperate expression that came from fighting the world every single day. "Thank you so much," the mother said, her voice shaking. "We've been to 2 places already. They said we were blocking the aisle. One manager actually asked us to leave because other customers were uncomfortable." Richard watched Katie's expression change. Her jaw tightened and her eyes flashed with something fierce. "Well, that's ridiculous," Katie said flatly. "You're not going anywhere. Let me fix this." Without asking anyone's permission, Katie started moving tables. She pushed 2 small tables together and shifted them to create a wider space. She did it quickly, like she'd done this 100 times before. Then she grabbed a clean menu and placed it directly in front of the girl, not the mother. "Hi there," Katie said, kneeling down so she was at eye level with the teenager. "I'm Katie. What's your name?" The girl's mouth moved, but the sounds came out jumbled. Her mother started to translate, but Katie held up a gentle hand. "Take your time," Katie said to the girl. "I'm listening." It took almost a minute, but eventually the girl managed to say something that sounded like Sophie. "Sophie." "That's beautiful," Katie said. "Okay, Sophie, here's what we've got today. The chocolate milkshake is really good. Like really good. I had one on my break yesterday. But if you're hungry, the grilled cheese is perfect. What sounds good to you?" Richard forgot about his cold coffee. He couldn't look away. This wasn't the performative kindness he'd seen at charity galas. This wasn't someone being nice because they had to be. Katie was treating Sophie like a person, not a problem. Sophie's mother had tears streaming down her face now, but they were different tears. Relief, maybe, or gratitude, or just the simple joy of someone treating her daughter with dignity. Katie brought out water in plastic cups with lids and bendable straws without being asked. She positioned Sophie's so it was easy to reach. When Sophie knocked her fork off the table with an involuntary hand movement, Katie picked it up and replaced it without making a big deal about it. "Happens to me all the time," Katie said with a wink. "I'm super clumsy." Richard had been watching all of this from his corner booth. His mind kept going back to his own daughter, Lily. She'd been in a wheelchair for 3 years now, ever since the accident. A drunk driver had run a red light and changed everything in a single moment. Lily used to be so full of life. She played soccer, had a million friends, never stopped talking. Now she barely left her bedroom. She'd pushed away every caregiver Richard had hired. She snapped at the physical therapists. She wouldn't even speak to him most days. Richard had spent a fortune trying to help her. The best doctors, the most expensive equipment, therapy sessions that cost more than most people's mortgage payments. Nothing worked. Lily just kept retreating further and further into herself. His ex-wife hadn't been able to handle it. She'd left 6 months after the accident, saying she needed time to process everything. That was 2.5 years ago. Richard hadn't heard from her since, except through lawyers. He watched Katie laugh at something Sophie said, even though he couldn't understand the words from where he sat. Katie got it somehow. She understood what Sophie was trying to say, and she responded like they were just two people having a normal conversation. That's what had been missing with Lily. Everyone treated her like she was broken, like she was a tragedy. Even Richard did it, though he tried not to. He could see it in Lily's eyes whenever he walked into her room. She knew he looked at her and saw everything she'd lost, but Katie didn't look at Sophie that way. Katie saw a teenage girl who wanted a milkshake. When Sophie and her mother finally left, the mother tried to tip Katie extra. Katie refused at first, but the mother insisted, pressing the bills into her hand while mouthing "thank you" over and over. Katie came back to Richard's table, looking a little embarrassed. "Sorry about the wait," she said. "Can I get you anything else?" "Actually," Richard said slowly, "can I ask you something?" Katie looked surprised but nodded. "Why did you do that? Help them like that?" Katie frowned like the question confused her. "What do you mean?" "They needed help. But you could have just served them and moved on. You went out of your way. You rearranged the whole section." Katie shrugged. "My little brother has Down syndrome. I've seen how people treat him. Like he's invisible. Or like he's some kind of inspiration just for existing. It's exhausting. People just want to be treated like people, you know?" Richard felt something shift in his chest. This young waitress, who probably made minimum wage and could barely afford her rent, understood something that all his money couldn't buy. "I have a daughter," Richard said quietly. "She's 16. She's been in a wheelchair for 3 years. Katie's expression softened. "That must be really hard." "It is, but not for the reasons you'd think." Richard paused, trying to find the right words. "She's given up. She won't leave the house. Won't see her friends. She's just angry all the time. And I don't know how to help her." Katie nodded slowly. "Yeah, I bet that's scary." Richard looked at this young woman, really looked at her. She had dark circles under her eyes from too many shifts and not enough sleep. Her hands had small burns, probably from carrying hot plates. But there was something about her, some kind of light that Lily hadn't had in 3 years. An idea started forming in his mind. It was probably crazy, but then again everything else had failed. "Katie," he said, "what if I offered you a job?" She blinked. "I have a job. A different one. Better pay. Much better." He pulled out his wallet and handed her his business card. "Just think about it." Katie looked at the card, her eyes widening as she read it. Richard Chen, CEO and founder, Chen Technologies. She looked back at him with suspicion. "What kind of job?" "The kind where you'd be helping someone who really needs it," Richard said. "My daughter needs someone like you. Not a therapist. Not a nurse. Just someone who sees her as a person first." Katie held the card like it might bite her. "I don't understand." "Just think about it," Richard repeated. He left $300 on the table for a $7 cup of coffee and walked out. Katie stood there holding his card and staring at the cash, wondering if this was real or if she'd just imagined the whole thing. Katie stared at the business card for 2 whole days before she did anything with it. She kept it in her apron pocket during her shifts at the diner, feeling the edge of it every time she reached for her order pad. At night, she'd take it out and look at it under her desk lamp while she studied for her nursing exam. Richard Chen, CEO and founder. The address listed was in the expensive part of town, where houses had gates and circular driveways. Katie had never even driven through that neighborhood, let alone been inside one of those houses. $300 for a cup of coffee. That's what kept running through her mind. That money had covered her electric bill and her little brother's school lunch account for the month, with enough left over for new shoes that Danny desperately needed. But it also felt too good to be true. Katie had heard stories. Rich men who made offers that sounded legitimate, but turned into something else entirely. She wasn't naive. She'd been working since she was 16 and she'd learned to spot trouble. But something about Richard had seemed different. The way he'd talked about his daughter, there'd been real pain in his eyes. Real desperation. And Katie knew that look because she'd seen it in her own mirror plenty of times. On Friday morning, exactly 1 week after their first meeting, Richard walked into the diner again. Katie was refilling salt shakers during the slow period between breakfast and lunch. She saw him before he saw her, and her heart started beating faster. He sat in the same booth as before. Katie took a deep breath and walked over with the coffee pot. "Black coffee?" she asked, keeping her voice steady. "Please." Richard waited until she'd filled his cup. "Did you think about what I said?" Katie set down the coffee pot and slid into the seat across from him. Her manager would probably yell at her for sitting with a customer, but she didn't care right now. "I need to know what you're really asking," she said, "because I've had people make offers before, and they don't usually mean what they say they mean." Richard didn't look offended. He nodded like he'd expected this. "That's fair, and I'm sorry if I made you uncomfortable. Let me be clear about what I'm asking." He wrapped his hands around the coffee cup. "My daughter's name is Lily. She was in a car accident 3 years ago. She's paralyzed from the waist down. Since then, she's become a completely different person. She won't leave the house. She's pushed away every friend she had. She barely speaks to me." Katie listened without interrupting. "I've hired physical therapists, occupational therapists, psychologists. The best money can buy. But Lily sees them all the same way, as people her father hired to fix her. She resents them. She resents me." Richard's voice cracked slightly. "When I watched you with Sophie last week, I saw something different. You didn't treat her like a patient or a problem. You just treated her like a person." "Okay," Katie said slowly. "But what exactly do you want me to do?" "Just spend time with her. A few hours a week. Not as a therapist or a nurse, just as someone close to her age who she might actually talk to. I'll pay you triple what you make here." Katie did the math in her head. Triple her wages would mean she could quit one of her other jobs, maybe 2. She could actually sleep more than 4 hours a night. She could take more than 1 class per semester. But something felt off. "Why would your daughter want to spend time with some random waitress her dad hired?" Katie asked. "Wouldn't that make it worse?" Richard smiled sadly. "Maybe. Probably. But everything else has failed, and I'm running out of ideas. I'm not asking you to be her friend. I'm just asking you to show up and be yourself. If she hates you, fine. At least I tried something different." Katie thought about her brother Danny. After their parents died in a house fire 4 years ago, Danny had shut down completely. He wouldn't talk, wouldn't go to school, wouldn't do anything. All the grief counselors said the same things, gave the same advice. Nothing helped. What finally got through to Danny was Katie's neighbor, Mr. Peterson, who started inviting Danny to help him fix cars in his garage. Mr. Peterson didn't talk about feelings or trauma. He just handed Danny wrenches and showed him how engines worked. Slowly, Danny came back to life. Sometimes people didn't need therapy. They just needed someone to treat them normally. "I want to meet her first," Katie said. "Just once. No commitment. If she doesn't want me there, I leave, and that's the end of it. Deal." Richard pulled out his phone. "When can you come?" "I'm off Tuesday afternoons." "Tuesday it is." Richard gave her the address and his phone number. Before he left, he put another $100 bill on the table. "That's not for the job," he said. "That's just a thank you for considering it." Katie wanted to refuse. Her pride told her to push the money back across the table. But her empty bank account and Danny's growing feet made her put it in her pocket instead. On Tuesday, Katie took 3 different buses to reach the Chen house. She'd looked up the address on her phone, but seeing it in person was something else entirely. The gate alone probably cost more than every car Katie had ever owned combined. She pressed the call button on the intercom, feeling ridiculous. "Yes," a woman's voice answered. Hi, I'm Katie Brennan. Richard Chen asked me to come by?" The gate swung open silently. Katie walked up a driveway that seemed longer than her entire street. The house was massive, all glass and white stone, with perfectly trimmed hedges and a fountain in the front yard. A woman in a housekeeper's uniform opened the front door before Katie could knock. "Mr. Chen is expecting you. Please follow me." The inside of the house was even more intimidating than the outside. Everything was white or cream-colored, with art on the walls that looked like it belonged in a museum. Katie was suddenly very aware of her worn jeans and the coffee stain on her jacket. The housekeeper led her upstairs and down a long hallway. She stopped at a door and knocked softly. "Lily, your father's guest is here." No response. The housekeeper opened the door anyway and gestured for Katie to enter. The room was huge, bigger than Katie's entire apartment. Floor-to-ceiling windows looked out over the backyard. There was a bed, a sitting area with a couch and TV, and a desk covered in books and papers. A girl sat in a wheelchair by the window, her back to the door. She had long dark hair that looked like it hadn't been brushed in a while. "Lily, this is Katie," the housekeeper said gently. Lily didn't turn around, didn't acknowledge them at all. The housekeeper gave Katie an apologetic look and left, closing the door behind her. Katie stood there for a moment, unsure what to do. She'd dealt with difficult patients during her clinical rotations, but this felt different. This felt personal. She walked over to the couch and sat down, not trying to position herself in Lily's line of sight. "So your dad definitely should have warned you I was coming, right?" Katie said to the room. "That's super awkward. I hate when people just show up." Silence. "I had this neighbor once who would just walk into our apartment without knocking. Just barge right in. I started keeping the chain lock on because it was so annoying." More silence. Katie pulled out her nursing textbook and opened it on her lap. If Lily wasn't going to talk, Katie might as well study. She had an exam next week on cardiac rhythms, and she needed to memorize all the different patterns. 20 minutes passed. Katie highlighted passages in her book and made notes in the margins. She was actually getting some good studying done. "He paid you to be here, didn't he?" Katie looked up. Lily still hadn't turned around, but at least she was speaking. "Yeah, he did," Katie said. "So you're just another one of his hired helpers. Another person who's supposed to fix me? I can't fix you. I'm not even a nurse yet. I'm still in school. Then why are you here?" "Honestly?" "The money. Your dad offered me triple what I make at my regular job. That's hard to turn down when you're trying to pay rent and keep your little brother fed." Lily finally turned her wheelchair around. She was pretty, with sharp features and dark eyes that looked older than 16, but there was something hard in her expression, something bitter. "At least you're honest about it." "What's the point in lying?" Katie shrugged. "Look, if you want me to leave, I'll leave. I'm not going to force you to spend time with me. But I'm off work on Tuesday afternoons, and your dad's paying me whether I sit here studying or sit at home studying, so I might as well be here." Lily studied her for a long moment. "You're really just going to sit there and do homework?" "Unless you want to do something else." "Like what?" "I don't know." "What do you usually do?" "Nothing. I sit here and stare out the window and wait for another day to be over." The honesty in Lily's voice cracked something open in Katie's chest. She recognized that feeling, that desperate emptiness that came from having your whole life change in an instant. "That sounds really boring," Katie said. Lily laughed, but it was a harsh sound. "Yeah, it is. Do you want to watch something? I'm obsessed with this terrible reality show about people who buy storage units. It's so dumb, but I can't stop watching it." Lily looked surprised. "That's what you want to do? Watch reality TV? I mean, yeah, unless you have a better idea." For the first time, something in Lily's expression softened just slightly. "Okay, sure, whatever." Katie pulled up the show on her phone and they watched 3 episodes together. Katie made commentary throughout, making fun of the ridiculous people and their terrible decisions. Eventually, Lily started adding her own comments. By the 3rd episode, she was almost smiling. The Tuesday visits became a regular thing. Katie would show up at 2 o'clock, let herself in through the gate code Richard had given her, and head straight to Lily's room. Sometimes they watched TV. Sometimes Katie studied while Lily did her online schoolwork. Sometimes they just talked. At first, the conversations were surface level. What classes were annoying? Which celebrities were overrated? Simple stuff. But after about a month, things started shifting. "Can I ask you something?" Lily said one Tuesday. They were watching another episode of the storage unit show, but neither of them was really paying attention anymore. "Sure. Why aren't you freaked out by my wheelchair?" Katie thought about it. "I don't know. Should I be? Everyone else is. They either stare at it or try really hard not to look at it. They talk to me like I'm 5 years old or like I'm some kind of inspiration for getting dressed in the morning. It's exhausting. My brother has Down syndrome," Katie said. "I've watched people do the same thing to him his whole life. Either they treat him like he's stupid, or they act like he's a hero just for existing. He hates both." "What's his name?" "Danny, he's 14. Total pain in my butt, but I'd do anything for him." "Where are your parents?" Katie had been expecting this question eventually. "They died 4 years ago. House fire. Faulty wiring." Lily's face changed. "I'm sorry." "Thanks, it sucked." "Still sucks sometimes." Katie paused. "But Danny and I figured it out. We had to." "Is that why you're working so much? Taking care of him?" "Yeah, I'm his legal guardian. Which is weird because I'm only 24, but the state agreed I was better than foster care." Katie smiled slightly. He eats everything in the apartment and leaves his stuff everywhere, but we're making it work. Lily was quiet for a moment. My mom left after the accident. Katie didn't say anything. She just waited. She said she needed time to process. That was 3 years ago. She calls on my birthday and Christmas, but that's it. She sent a card last year. Lily's voice was flat, emotionless. She couldn't handle having a disabled daughter, I guess. That's not about you, Katie said firmly. That's about her not being strong enough. Everyone says that. But she left. That's the reality? I'm too much work, so she left. No, you're her daughter, and she failed you. There's a difference. Lily looked at Katie with something like surprise. Most people tried to defend her mother or make excuses. Katie didn't. Do you ever want to leave? Just take off and have your own life? Lily asked. Sometimes, Katie admitted. Like when Danny clogs the toilet and floods the bathroom, or when he gets suspended from school for arguing with his teacher. Yeah, sometimes I think about how different my life would be if I didn't have to take care of him. But you don't leave. No. Because he's my brother, and I love him. And that's what you do for people you love. You show up even when it's hard. Katie looked directly at Lily. Your mom should have done that for you. The fact that she didn't isn't your fault. Something in Lily's expression cracked and tears started running down her face. Not delicate crying, but big gulping sobs that shook her whole body. Katie moved closer and just sat with her, not trying to fix it or make it better. Just being there. When Lily finally stopped crying, she wiped her face with her sleeve. I haven't cried about her in over a year, she said. I thought I was done being sad about it. I don't think you're ever really done with stuff like that, Katie said. You just get better at carrying it. After that day, Lily started opening up more. She told Katie about her friends from before the accident, how they'd slowly stopped coming around because she kept pushing them away. She talked about how much she missed soccer and running and just being able to move without thinking about it. Katie listened and shared her own stories. She told Lily about the first year after their parents died, when she'd barely been holding it together. How she'd failed 2 classes because she couldn't focus. How Danny had started having nightmares and wouldn't sleep alone. How did you get through it? Lily asked. Honestly, 1 day at a time. Some days were okay. Some days were awful. But eventually the okay days started outnumbering the awful ones. Does it ever feel normal again? It feels different. Not normal like before, but a new kind of normal. Katie thought about how to explain it. It's like when you rearrange your bedroom. At first, everything feels wrong because the bed's on the wrong wall. But after a while, you get used to it, and eventually, you can't even remember how the old setup looked. 3 months into their Tuesday meetings, Katie showed up with her phone already out. Okay, so there's this band playing downtown on Saturday. They're terrible, but like, terrible in a fun way. The venue is accessible, and tickets are only $20. Katie tried to sound casual. Wanna go? Lily's face immediately closed off. I don't go out. Yeah, I know. That's why I'm asking. Katie, look, you don't have to decide now. I'm going either way because I already bought my ticket. But if you want to come, let me know by Friday. Katie put her phone away and pulled out her textbook. Now, can you quiz me on respiratory medications? I have this professor who loves to ask trick questions. Lily didn't bring it up for the rest of the visit. Katie didn't push. She'd planted the seed. That was enough. On Friday morning, Katie was working the breakfast shift at the diner when her phone buzzed. A text from a number she didn't recognize. This is Lily, I got your number from my dad. If the offer is still open, I'll go to the concert. But if I hate it, we're leaving. Katie smiled so wide her face hurt. On Saturday evening, Richard's driver picked up Katie from her apartment, and they headed to the Chen house. Katie had dressed carefully, trying to find something that looked nice but not like she was trying too hard. She'd settled on jeans and a black shirt with her leather jacket. Lily was waiting in the foyer when Katie arrived, and Katie had to stop herself from staring. Lily had done something different with her hair, wearing it in a style that made her look older. She had makeup on, not too much but enough to make her dark eyes stand out. You look great, Katie said. I'm terrified, Lily admitted. That's okay. Being scared means you're doing something that matters. Richard stood nearby looking like he might cry. Katie caught his eye and gave him a small nod. He mouthed thank you and stepped back. The venue was downtown in an old warehouse that had been converted into a music space. It was loud and crowded, with concrete floors and exposed pipes on the ceiling. Katie had called ahead to make sure there was accessible seating, and the staff had reserved them a spot near the side with a good view of the stage. Getting through the crowd was the hard part. People stared. Some moved out of the way too slowly, forcing Lily to navigate around them. Katie could see Lily's hands gripping the wheels of her chair tighter, her jaw clenched. "Hey," Katie said, leaning down. "You're doing great. And if anyone gives you trouble, I know where all their pressure points are. Nursing school perks." Lily laughed, and some of the tension in her shoulders eased. They made it to their spot just as the opening band took the stage. The music was loud and energetic, not great, but not terrible either. Katie started moving to the beat, and after a minute, Lily started bobbing her head too. Between sets, a guy about their age wandered over. He had messy hair and a vintage band shirt. "Hey, did you catch these guys last month at the Metro?" he asked, looking at Lily. Lily blinked, surprised that he was talking directly to her and not to Katie. "No, this is my first time seeing them. They're way better live than on their recordings. Their drummer is incredible." He gestured to the stage. "I'm Nathan, by the way." Lily. Nathan talked to Lily about music for 10 minutes, asking her opinions and actually listening to her answers. He didn't mention the wheelchair. Didn't treat her any differently. Before he walked away, he asked if he could get her number. Lily gave it to him. Her face flushed pink. After he left, Lily turned to Katie with wide eyes. "Did that just happen? A cute guy asked for your number?" "Yeah, that definitely just happened. I don't know what to do with that information." "Well, if he texts you, text him back. That's generally how this works." Katie grinned. "See? I told you this would be fun." The main band came on, and they were just as wonderfully terrible as Katie had promised. They played too loud and off-key, but everyone was having such a good time that it didn't matter. Katie and Lily sang along to the songs they knew, making up words to the ones they didn't. At one point, Lily grabbed Katie's hand and squeezed it. "Thank you," she said, her voice almost drowned out by the music. "For not giving up on me," Katie squeezed back. "Never." On the drive home, Lily talked the entire time. About the music, about Nathan, about how good it felt to be out in the world again. She pulled out her phone and started looking up other accessible venues, planning future outings. The concert changed something fundamental in Lily. It was like a switch had been flipped. Suddenly she wanted to do everything. She asked Katie to take her to the mall, to the movies, to the coffee shop downtown. She started styling her hair again and caring about what clothes she wore. Richard watched his daughter transform with a mixture of joy and disbelief. At dinner, Lily actually talked to him about her day. She made jokes. She asked him about his work. For the first time in 3 years, she seemed interested in being alive. "I don't know how to thank you," Richard told Katie one evening when he caught her on her way out. "You've given me my daughter back." Katie felt uncomfortable with the praise. "I didn't do anything special. I just hung out with her." That's exactly what she needed. Someone who treated her like a regular person. Richard pulled an envelope from his pocket. "I know we agreed on a rate, but I'd like to pay for the rest of your nursing school. All of it. Tuition, books, everything." Katie stared at the envelope like it might explode. "I can't accept that. Why not?" "Because I don't take handouts. I'm paying my own way through school. It's not a handout. It's payment for services rendered. You've done more for Lily than any of the therapists I hired." Richard held out the envelope. "Please, let me do this." Katie wanted to say no. Her pride demanded it. But she thought about how much easier life would be without the crushing weight of student loans. She thought about Danny and the opportunities she could give him if she wasn't stretched so thin financially. "I'll make you a deal," Katie said finally. "Set up a scholarship fund in your daughter's name. Help other students who are struggling. I'll let you pay for this semester, but that's it." Richard smiled. "Done." But as Lily's world expanded, new complications emerged. She started joining Katie at the diner on weekends, rolling up to tables and chatting with customers. She had a natural warmth that people responded to, and her presence brought in more business. The owner, Jerry, gave her an unofficial job as a greeter and paid her under the table. Lily loved it. She loved feeling useful, loved interacting with strangers who didn't know her history. At the diner, she wasn't the disabled girl. She was just Lily, the friendly hostess with the great smile. She also started going to physical therapy again, but with a different attitude. Before, she'd gone because her father made her. resenting every minute. Now she went because she wanted to be stronger. She wanted to be able to transfer herself from her chair to a regular seat. She wanted to be able to navigate more places independently. Her therapist called Richard in tears one day. "I don't know what happened, but Lily is a completely different person. She's working so hard. She's actually trying." Nathan texted Lily 2 days after the concert and they started talking constantly. He'd come to the diner sometimes, ordering coffee and sitting at Lily's section for hours while they talked. He was studying music production at the community college and worked part-time at a record store. Katie watched their budding relationship with a mixture of happiness and concern. She was thrilled that Lily was experiencing normal teenage things, but she also worried. What if Nathan hurt her? What if he turned out to be the kind of person who couldn't handle dating someone in a wheelchair? But Nathan seemed genuine. He invited Lily to his band's practices. He asked her opinion on songs he was working on. He introduced her to his friends without awkwardness or explanation. Everything seemed to be going well. Too well, maybe. The problem started when Katie's nursing school ramped up. She entered her clinical rotation phase, which meant long shifts at the hospital on top of her regular classes. Her schedule became chaotic. Some weeks she had to work overnight shifts. Other weeks she had back-to-back 12-hour days. She tried to maintain the Tuesday visits with Lily, but it got harder and harder. She'd show up exhausted, barely able to keep her eyes open. One week she had to cancel entirely because she'd been scheduled for a double shift she couldn't get out of. "It's fine," Lily said when Katie called to apologize. "I understand." But it wasn't fine. Lily had become dependent on Katie's presence, and when that presence started to become inconsistent, old fears crept back in. Katie canceled again the following week. And the week after that, she still texted Lily every day and called when she could, but it wasn't the same as being there in person. Lily started spiraling. She stopped going to the diner. She stopped responding to Nathan's texts as quickly. She retreated back to her room, staring out the window like she used to. Richard noticed immediately. "What happened? You were doing so well." "Katie's too busy for me now," Lily said flatly. She got what she wanted. "She's almost done with nursing school. She doesn't need your money anymore." "That's not fair. She's working incredibly hard. Everyone leaves eventually. Why should she be different?" Richard tried to talk to Katie about it, but she was so overwhelmed with school and work that she didn't fully understand what was happening. In her mind, she was still texting Lily every day, still keeping in touch. She didn't realize that Lily had built her entire new life around their friendship, and now that foundation was crumbling. Things came to a head on a Thursday evening. Katie had been awake for 36 hours straight, working a double shift at the hospital followed by a night shift at the diner. She was so tired she could barely think straight. Her phone rang. "Lily. Hey, can I call you back? I'm just finishing up a shift." "You always say that now." Lily's voice was cold. "You're always too busy." "Lily, I'm sorry. I know I haven't been around as much, but my clinical rotations are killing me. I'm barely sleeping. You made me believe you were different, that you actually cared about me, not just the paycheck from my dad." Katie felt frustration bubble up through her exhaustion. "That's not fair. I do care about you. Then prove it. Come over tonight." "I can't. I have class in 4 hours and I haven't slept since yesterday morning." "Of course you can't. You're always too busy now. Just admit that you don't want to spend time with me anymore." Something snapped in Katie. The lack of sleep, the constant pressure, the weight of caring for Danny while working multiple jobs and going to school full-time. It all crashed over her at once. "You know what, Lily? You're right. I am too busy. I'm busy trying to finish nursing school so I can actually have a career. I'm busy taking care of my brother. I'm busy working 3 jobs to keep a roof over our heads. I'm sorry that I can't dedicate every Tuesday afternoon to making you feel better about your life." Silence on the other end of the line. "I'm not your therapist, Lily. I'm not your mother. I'm your friend, and friends have lives outside of each other. If you can't understand that, then maybe I shouldn't come back at all." Katie heard Lily's sharp intake of breath, but she was too tired and too frustrated to care. She hung up. For 2 weeks they didn't speak. Katie threw herself into her work and studies, trying not to think about the hurt in Lily's voice. Lily retreated completely, refusing to leave her room even for meals. Richard tried to mediate, but both of them were too stubborn to reach out first. Katie felt guilty but also angry. She had been trying so hard to balance everything, and Lily had made it about herself. Lily felt abandoned. Again. First her mother, now Katie. It confirmed what she'd always believed, that she was too much work, too much trouble, and eventually, everyone would leave. The silence between them stretched on, both of them too proud and too hurt to make the first move. Richard watched his daughter sink back into depression, all the progress of the past months evaporating like it had never existed. Then, 2 weeks after the fight, Katie's phone buzzed during a rare study break. It was a text from an unknown number. "Hi, this is Nathan. Lily's friend? I got your number from Mr. Chen. I don't know what happened between you two, but Lily's not doing well. She won't talk to anyone, won't eat much. I'm worried about her." Katie stared at the message, her chest tight. Part of her wanted to ignore it. Lily had made her choice. But the bigger part of her, the part that had sat with Lily through crying sessions and celebrated her small victories, couldn't let go that easily. Before she could respond, another text came through. "This one from Danny's school. This is Principal Rodriguez. Danny was involved in an incident today. Please call the school immediately." Katie's hand started shaking. She called the school, her heart pounding. The secretary connected her to the principal. Danny got into a fight with another student. The other boy was saying some unkind things about Danny's disability, and Danny pushed him. The other boy fell and hit his head. "He's okay, but we need you to come get Danny. He's suspended for 3 days. Katie closed her eyes. Of course this was happening now. I'll be there in 20 minutes. She picked up Danny, who was crying and upset and couldn't explain why he'd lost his temper. She took him home, made him dinner, and helped him calm down. Only after he'd gone to bed did she let herself fall apart. Katie sat on her bathroom floor at 2 in the morning, crying so hard she thought she might throw up. Everything felt like too much. School, work, Danny, Lily. She was drowning, and there was no one to pull her out. Her phone was in her hand. She had been staring at it for 10 minutes trying to decide if she should call someone. But who? She didn't have parents anymore. She didn't have close friends because she'd been too busy to maintain friendships. She was alone in this, just like she'd been alone for the past 4 years. Finally, she opened her messages and started typing. "Mr. Chen, this is Katie. I know Lily and I aren't speaking right now, but I need help. Danny got suspended from school today and I'm drowning. I don't know what to do anymore." She hit send before she could chicken out. Then she put her phone down and tried to pull herself together. Her phone rang 2 minutes later. "Richard." "Katie, tell me what happened." She explained everything. The fight, Danny's suspension, how overwhelmed she'd been feeling. The words poured out of her like water from a broken dam. "Where's Danny now?" Richard asked when she finished. "Asleep." He cried himself exhausted. "And you? When did you last sleep more than a few hours?" Katie laughed bitterly. "I don't remember. Listen to me. I'm sending my driver to pick up you and Danny first thing in the morning. You're both coming to stay in my guest house for a few days. No arguments. I can't accept that. Yes, you can. Katie, you've been taking care of everyone else. Let someone take care of you for once." His voice softened. "You helped my daughter. Let me help you." Katie was too tired to argue. "Okay." The next morning, Richard's driver arrived at 7. Katie had packed bags for her and Danny, though Danny was confused about where they were going. "We're staying with a friend for a few days," Katie explained. "What friend?" "Mr. Chen, remember I told you about him?" Danny's face brightened. "The rich guy? With the big house?" "Yeah, that one." When they arrived at the Chen estate, Richard was waiting at the door. He shook Danny's hand seriously, treating him with respect that made Danny stand up straighter. "Katie's told me a lot about you," Richard said. "I hear you're quite the artist." Danny nodded enthusiastically. "I like to draw." "Well, I have an art studio in the guest house that no one's using. Feel free to use any of the supplies you find." Richard showed them to the guest house, which was nicer than any place Katie had ever lived. 2 bedrooms, a full kitchen, a living room with a TV bigger than Katie's entire bedroom back home. "Rest today," Richard said. "Both of you. I've already called your school and explained you're dealing with a family matter. And Danny, I've spoken with your principal. You're not in trouble. We're going to work this out." After Richard left, Katie collapsed on the couch. Danny explored the guest house, discovering the art studio and immediately settling in with sketch pads and colored pencils. Katie slept for 14 hours straight. When she woke up, it was the next morning, and she felt more human than she had in months. She found Danny in the kitchen eating pancakes that someone had apparently made for him. He had paint on his hands and looked happier than he'd been in weeks. "Mr. Chen's chef made breakfast," Danny said, through a mouthful of pancakes. "And his housekeeper said I could use the swimming pool if I want." Katie smiled. "Sounds good." After breakfast, there was a knock on the guest house door. Katie opened it to find Lily in her wheelchair, her face pale and nervous. "Hi," Lily said quietly. "Hi." They stared at each other for a long moment. "Can we talk?" Lily asked. Katie stepped outside, closing the door behind her so Danny wouldn't overhear. They moved to the patio area, where a fountain burbled peacefully. "I'm sorry," Lily said before Katie could speak. "I was selfish. I made everything about me and didn't think about what you were dealing with." "I'm sorry too," Katie said. "I shouldn't have snapped at you like that. You didn't deserve it." "Yes, I did. You were right. I was treating you like you existed just to make me feel better, like you didn't have your own life and problems." Lily's eyes filled with tears. "When Nathan texted me about you and Danny, I realized what a terrible friend I've been. You've been there for me through everything, and I never even asked how you were doing." Katie sat down on a bench next to Lily's wheelchair. "I should have told you I was struggling. I just kept trying to handle everything myself, because that's what you always do. You take care of everyone else and never ask for help." Lily reached over and took Katie's hand. "But I want to help you now, if you'll let me." "I don't know how you can help." "Well, for starters, my dad told me about Danny's suspension. The kid who was bullying him? His parents are friends with the school board president. Dad's already made some calls. Danny's suspension is being removed from his record, and the other kid is getting sensitivity training." Katie's eyes widened. "He did that?" "Yeah, and he's setting up a meeting with the principal to establish a better anti-bullying policy for students with disabilities." Lily smiled slightly. "Turns out having a rich, connected dad can be useful sometimes." "Lily, there's more. Dad found a support group for siblings of people with disabilities. It meets every week, and it's specifically for teens like Danny who are dealing with being caregivers at a young age. I thought maybe Danny might want to try it." Katie felt tears running down her face. "I don't know what to say. Say you'll stop trying to do everything alone. Say you'll let us be there for you the way you've been there for me." Katie pulled Lily into a hug, and they both cried. Not sad, crying, but the kind of crying that comes from relief and gratitude and the overwhelming feeling of not being alone anymore. Over the next few days, things started to shift. Richard arranged for his personal doctor to see Danny and talk through some strategies for managing his emotions. The doctor recommended a counselor who specialized in working with young people with developmental disabilities. Katie met with the counselor too, and was surprised by how helpful it was to talk to someone about the stress of being Danny's guardian. She'd been carrying so much guilt about not being enough, not doing enough. The counselor helped her see that. She was doing an incredible job under impossible circumstances. Lily started spending time with Danny, and they bonded over art. Lily had taken drawing classes before her accident, and she taught Danny techniques for shading and perspective. Danny, in turn, showed Lily his favorite comic books and explained the stories with such enthusiasm that Lily couldn't help but get invested. One evening, as Katie watched Lily and Danny laughing together over a particularly ridiculous superhero plot, Richard came to stand beside her. "You know what I've learned from all this?" he said quietly. "What?" "Money can solve a lot of problems, but it can't buy connection. It can't buy someone who genuinely cares." He looked at Katie. "You gave that to Lily. You saw her as a person, not a problem to fix. And now she's doing the same for Danny." "She's a good kid," Katie said. "You raised her well. I made a lot of mistakes. I'm still making them. But maybe between the two of us we can figure out how to help both our kids. Maybe." 6 months later, Katie walked across the stage at her nursing school graduation. The ceremony was held in a large auditorium with hundreds of students and thousands of family members in attendance. Katie's section was loud. Danny was there, of course, cheering obnoxiously. But so were Richard and Lily, and Nathan, who'd become a regular part of Lily's life, and Jerry from the diner, who'd given her the time off, and even Mr. Peterson, their old neighbor who'd first helped Danny through his grief. As Katie received her diploma, the superintendent made a special announcement. Katie Brennan is also the first recipient of the Lily Chen Scholarship for students who have overcome significant personal adversity while pursuing nursing education. This scholarship was established by Richard Chen in honor of his daughter, and it will continue to help students like Katie for years to come. The audience applauded, but Katie's section went wild. She looked out at them, her makeshift family, and felt overwhelmed by gratitude. After the ceremony, they all went out to celebrate at a restaurant that Lily had picked specifically because it was accessible and had amazing desserts. "Speech," Danny demanded, banging his fork on the table. Katie stood up, feeling embarrassed but happy. "I don't know what to say except thank you. Danny, you're the reason I do everything. I love you, and I'm so proud of who you're becoming." Danny beamed. "Richard, you believed in me when I was just a waitress who helped someone at a diner. You gave me opportunities I never could have imagined." Richard nodded, his eyes suspiciously bright. "And Lily." Katie looked at her friend. "You changed my life just as much as I apparently changed yours. You taught me that it's okay to need help, that asking for support isn't weakness, and you showed me what real friendship looks like." Lily was full-on crying now, not even trying to hide it. "To new beginnings," Katie said, raising her glass. "To new beginnings," everyone echoed. 2 months later, Katie started her first job as a registered nurse at the hospital where she'd done her clinical rotations. The pay was good enough that she could afford a bigger apartment for her and Danny, one with 2 real bedrooms and a kitchen table that didn't wobble. She still saw Lily twice a week, but now it was just because they were friends, not because anyone was paying anyone. They'd started a small nonprofit together, connecting teenagers with disabilities to college students who could serve as mentors. The program was small, just a few matches so far, but it was growing. Lily had enrolled in online college classes and was thinking about studying social work. She and Nathan were officially dating, and he'd introduced her to his entire extended family at a barbecue, where Lily had charmed everyone. Danny was doing well in school, and the support group had helped him tremendously. He'd made friends with other kids who understood what it was like to have a sibling with special needs. He still had tough days, but he was learning how to manage his emotions better. One Sunday evening, Katie's new apartment was full of people. Richard had come over with groceries and insisted on cooking dinner. Lily and Nathan were setting the table. Danny was showing Mr. Peterson his latest drawings. The TV was on in the background, playing some show no one was really watching. It was chaotic and loud and messy, and it was exactly what Katie had always wanted. A family. Not the one she'd been born into or the one she'd expected to have, but a family nonetheless. As they sat down to eat, Danny raised his juice glass. "I want to make a toast." Everyone turned to look at him, to Katie, the best sister ever, and to our weird family that we kind of made up as we went along. "I love you guys." "We love you too, Danny," Lily said, reaching over to ruffle his hair. Katie looked around the table at these people who'd become her family through a combination of chance and choice. A millionaire CEO who'd seen a waitress help a stranger and decided to trust her with his daughter. A teenager in a wheelchair who'd been drowning in anger and found a way back to herself. A guy who loved music and saw past disabilities to the person underneath. And her little brother, who'd lost his parents but gained so much more. Life hadn't turned out anything like Katie had planned. It had been harder, messier, more complicated. But it had also been richer, fuller, and more beautiful than she ever could have imagined. Sometimes the best families are the ones you build yourself, one small act of kindness at a time. And sometimes, a simple moment in a diner, a decision to help someone who needs it, can change not just one life but many lives in ways no one could have predicted.